Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with a video that is all about every book that I have given 5 stars so far this year. Yes, we are actually at the time where we have to start looking at our mid-year stats. I can't believe it, but June is half gone. At the time of filming this, I really am shocked. And I thought that I would do this video just because I think 2023 has got to be my most successful reading year that I have ever had on booktube. I really am loving what I'm picking up. I feel so much more at ease with what I am reading. I feel like my tastes have really changed over the past year specifically. And so this year I really do feel like I have picked a lot of winners. These are going to be in no particular order because I think if I was going chronologically, I would have to start at the bottom of my stack, and that's just not happening. So it is extremely hot outside today. It is so humid. And so that is why I look like I have been in a wind tunnel. I don't know why I even bother trying to do my hair anymore now that it's June. But let's go on and get into my list. I have rated, I think, 14 books 5 stars this year. Can you believe it? It's really incredible to me. The first of these that I'm going to start with is the only book that I don't have physically. And so I just want to go on and mention it so I don't forget it. But that is Briefly a Delicious Life by Nell Stevens. This took me completely by surprise. And that's honestly, I think a lot of the charm of this book is just that I had no idea what to expect. This is a historical fiction that is about when George Sand and Frederick Chopin went and stayed at like a monastery in Spain, but the monastery is being haunted by the ghost of a teenage girl who is kind of in love with George Sand. And to me, the charm of this is just in the writing and also in our ghostly character, Blanca. I love her. She might be my favorite character that I've read so far this year. She really is just a delight to read, and all around, that is what I would say this book is. To me, it was just refreshing. It was light. It was really, really just wonderful to read. I felt so cozy reading this, weirdly enough, and I think it's probably a pretty great one actually to read at this time of year. It does feel very sun-baked sometimes. I just really, really enjoyed this, and I think I picked it up assuming I would like it, but I didn't know that I would be so obsessed with the writing of it. I just found this really charming. It taught me a lot because I knew nothing about George Sand or Frederick Chopin before reading this, and now I'm really fascinated by them. So this was just an all-around delight to me and an absolute surprise. 100% this next book did not come as a surprise to me. It is the only classic on this list that I have read for the first time this year. I do have a classic that I've reread recently that I gave 5 stars, but this is really the only classic that I can say I've truly loved this year that was new to me. This has not been a classics year for me at all. In fact, I'm really just out of love with them. So I was really glad that I picked this up because I felt like it rekindled my love a little bit, especially for classic poetry, and that is Petrarch's Canzoniere. This is not the entire Canzoniere. This is just a selection, but I picked this up when I was in Florence in October last year, and I am so glad I did. This was jaw-dropping. Gorgeous. One of y'all commented to me about this and said you started reading this in the store and almost cried because it was so beautiful. And that's a vibe. I completely understand that. A lot of these poems are just absolutely stunning. Petrarch was one of the last bigs of his era that I had to tackle, and so I've kind of been putting him off a little bit. I also figured I just wouldn't like him because he is semi a contemporary with Dante, but Petrarch was always very much like, oh, I didn't pull anything from Dante. I'm not really into Dante. And yet their works are clearly in conversation with one another. And so I just thought maybe I wouldn't get on with him. But I think he as a person is genuinely fascinating. And it's almost more fascinating to learn about him as a person than to read the poetry. But to me, that's a really symbiotic relationship. Learning about him really elevates the poetry. Reading the poetry really elevates him. I think he is very romantic. This was incredibly romantic poetry. It was angsty. It was everything you want out of a love poem collection. And I just really adored this. It was an instant 5 stars. I think I read the first 4 poems in this collection and I was like, 5 stars. I don't see how this can get any better. And it continued to get better, believe it or not. This is also a dual language edition, and I really wanted to challenge myself to at least attempt that Italian before I read the English translation, and I did attempt the Italian in every case. It didn't always work out. Sometimes I really had to go to the English automatically, but sometimes I was just really pleased with myself. I was really pleased with my progress in terms of learning Italian, so this was a wonderful experience all around, and that may be part of why I gave it 5 stars, is just that it was a really engaging time for me on multiple different levels. Believe it or not, one of the first 5 stars that I gave this year was to How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix. If I am being honest, if I really look at this with a critical eye, this is not my favorite book of his. I have rated 3 of his books 5 stars, including this one, but to me, this does not have near the staying power that the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires or My Best Friend's Exorcism does. Those books had a lot of heart, and this one did as well. I think that's probably Grady Hendrix's tagline, is just that his books have a lot of heart and soul, and I think that's what makes them so charming, and that's what makes me want to revisit them. But I also think what I really appreciate most about Grady Hendrix is that he is clearly a Southerner, and so when he is writing about Southern towns, specifically when he's writing about Charleston, which is where he's from, it is so authentic to my lived experience. It's crazy. I feel like a lot of times when authors set books in the South, they have a conception of what it is, like we're all sitting on our front porches drinking mint juleps all the time, and we talk in a certain way. That's not really true. In some cases it is. In some cases it is. But I feel like Grady Hendrix really gets the authentic Southern experience, and I think he also understands women. And I often am very, very hard on male authors because, especially when they're writing women as main characters, I feel like it just was a poor choice. A lot of times I feel like men don't get it. Grady Hendrix does. I think a lot of his female characters are incredibly layered. I just feel like he understands women in a very respectful way, but in a nuanced way as well. I really, really enjoy him. I don't necessarily think this is my favorite of his, and if I'm thinking about it objectively, I wonder if I should bump this rating down to a 4, because I have certainly thought of his other books more frequently than this one, but this is a whole lot of fun. We then have The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This really shouldn't have come as a surprise to me, but it did, absolutely. Roshani Chokshi is one of my favorite currently working authors. I really enjoy her eye and her idea of an aesthetic. I think that's a lot of what I really enjoy about her as an author, is I just really like the vibe of her works. And this is no exception. This is her first adult novel. It was dreamy. It was lyrically written. The prose was so incredibly purple. So I had a great time. I think this book is going to be hit and miss with a lot of people because I just feel like it has been marketed the wrong way. I think people going into this expecting a standard fantasy book are not going in with the right expectations, because that's not necessarily what this book is. This is essentially a love letter to fairy tales in many ways, and so the book is structured like a folk tale. All of the characters kind of fit into specific folklore archetypes, and so a lot of times my complaint, if I had a complaint about this, was just that I wanted a little bit more out of the characters than what I was getting. But once I realized what the point of the book was, what the theme of the book was, which was kind of analyzing fairy tales and folklore and their place in our lives, I loved it. I understood what she was going for here, and it was absolutely perfect in my opinion. I just really, really love this, and I kind of want people to go into this blind because there was so much about this book that I didn't see coming and that I knew nothing about when I was reading the blurb. I think this was a really wonderful mystery. Of every book that I have rated 5 stars this year, I think this is probably the hardest sell, but once this book really does find its feet, once it finds its audience, I just think it's going to be a favorite for a lot of people this year. It certainly is for me. I find myself thinking of quotes from this all the time. The writing was so breathtakingly beautiful, it was almost moving. Let's talk about these two together, Jade City and Jade War. I cannot believe it has taken me this long to pick up this series. This is an adult fantasy series that is actually an urban fantasy, and it is about gangs. It's about the mafia, essentially, in an Asian-centric world. It is incredible. The whole entire plot of this revolves around Jade, which is the stone like we know, but in this world, Jade imbues you with some extra abilities, let's say. And so we follow mainly one crime family, one mafia family, and it is incredible. Truly, especially this second book, I spent the entire last 50 pages or so picking my jaw up off the floor. Jade City specifically has to be the strongest first book in a series I've read in a really long time. I just truly adored this. And I think it really has everything that I am constantly looking for from fantasy works, which is kind of political machinations, discussions, and strong character dynamics. Not a lot is explained to you about the magic system here. Jade is never really explained in any meaningful way. I don't want it to be. I don't need that. If you were explaining magic to me, it's science. That's what it is. And thus, I'm not happy with a lot of modern fantasy. I don't want it explained to me. And so to me, that was a lot of the charm of this. But also what is a lot of the charm of this is that the magic and the supernatural elements truly do take a back seat to the family dynamics, the political machinations, the fraught tension with their rival gang. All of that is far more important than Jade itself, but Jade is constantly there in the background. I think the action scenes here are so incredible. The best thing about this series, in my opinion, is how visual it is. I truly feel like when I am reading these books that I am watching a film, that I'm watching a television show. I am not one who cannot put a book down, if you know what I'm saying. When it's time to go to bed, I'm putting the book down. You know, if it's in the middle of a paragraph, I will sit a book down. I really don't care. I acknowledge the passage of time. I constantly have that in the back of my mind when I'm reading. Not with these. I think it was 1, 2 o'clock in the morning one day when I was reading this. I truly could not believe it. Like, I just lost myself in the book and thus lost track of time. That is so incredibly rare for me. And really, this series has taught me that I have been reading a lot of subpar books over the past few years. And I have been rating them highly because I didn't know what was out there. To me, this is literature. The easiest 5 stars I think I've given all year. Incredible character work. Just incredible writing. I think the writing is so quotable. It's so vivid. The world is incredible. The reason that the third book is not being held up here is that I don't want to finish the series. I don't want it to be over. I'm saving that for a rainy day, and it's going to be a very, very rainy day. A day when I accept that I will go into a book slump because I don't want to leave this world. I don't want to leave these characters. We then have The Adventures of Amina al-Sirafi by Shannon Chakraborty. This is another one that kind of swept me off my feet. Just was a complete delight to me from start to finish. This is a book I have seen such mixed reviews on because some people have really truly loved this and some people have really hated it. And I think what is going to make or break this book for you is if you like the style of humor in it. This is a much more lighthearted book than her first series. And so if you know that and you acknowledge it going in, I think you're in for a really great time. This is about pirates. What can I say? Speaking about things that you can easily visualize, stuff that you can easily see, that's what this book is as well. I found this incredibly vivid. I thought it was so well described. To me, that's Shannon Chakraborty's gift. I just truly feel transported when I read her works. I love anything set in the desert. I love anything set on the sea. Those were the main 2 settings we had here, and I just really loved it. It was so swashbuckling and fun. I love Pirates of the Caribbean. That was one of my fixations as a child. I think it was basically my only fixation as a child. I was obsessed. And for years and years after that, I was constantly on the hunt for a pirate book that encapsulated everything that I feel when I watch Curse of the Black Pearl, and nothing comes close. Specifically, fantasy pirates don't work for me. Though this is fantasy, it's set in our world, and I think that did a lot for my enjoyment of it. As soon as I started this, as soon as I hit maybe chapter 2, I knew this was going to be the one. This is the one that makes me feel like I'm watching Pirates of the Caribbean. And it truly did. And to me, it was just so much fun. This has also been a year of me just reading for fun. And I think I forget that a lot, especially when you're a content creator, when you're on booktube. It often feels like you're reading for a purpose. And last year and the years before, I would kind of force myself to read a variety. And so I found myself picking up books that maybe I wasn't that enthused by. And this year I said, that's not happening. I'm just gonna read for fun. And I think I found a lot of my joy in reading again by reading books like this year. To me, this, Jade City, and another series that I am about to mention have completely reinvigorated my love for reading. And so this one was just a delight to me. I'm really excited about the rest of the series. The only other classic on this list is one that I recently reread, and that is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. And when I initially read this, I think I gave it 3 or 4 stars. There are so many shortcomings to A Tale of Two Cities. I mean this honestly. When you are reading A Tale of Two Cities and you compare it objectively to other things that Charles Dickens wrote, I think it is incredibly weak. But the prose is so beautiful. The language around the mobs in this is absolutely incredible. And to me, this has the ending. This is the ending in literature. Truly, this book is perfect, if only for the ending. And so this is one of Charles Dickens's 2 historical fictions, and it's about the French Revolution. It is jaw-dropping, angsty. You're in pain from page 1. It is just incredible. And you know, I learned that Cassandra Clare based the Infernal Devices, her Victorian series, on A Tale of Two Cities. Makes so much sense. I mean, Charles walked so that she could run. And so that was kind of the level of pain here. If you have read The Infernal Devices and you remember how you felt at the end of that 3rd book, that's how you're going to feel here. And it's just wonderful to me, truly. I think I want to applaud any book that can get that emotional of a reaction out of me because it's rare. I don't think it's often, and it's especially, I would think, rare for something that is a classic. That shows just how current, to me, Charles Dickens is. I think he transcends time. He doesn't really read like a classic author, in my opinion, which is what makes him really fresh and new, and that is the case with this. This could have been published last year. Yes, there are a lot of flaws in this. I could talk ad nauseum about them. I have a lot of issues with The Tale of Two Cities when I'm thinking about it objectively, but when I am rating on enjoyment, this one gets 5 stars. Possibly if I could give it more than that, I would. I have cried twice in my life over a book, like truly cried, actual tears. In this and Cassandra Clare's Infernal Devices. Those are the 2 times. And now I know they're linked, which I think is really funny. But I'm really glad that I decided to reread this. I hope that it has reinvigorated my love for Charles Dickens because I haven't liked basically anything that I have tried from him in the past couple of years. So I hope that this is encouraging me to kind of go back on my journey with him. Let's talk about The Villa. The Villa is the book that I have been saying from the start of the year is going to be my favorite, and I think it is. I think on The Villa very, very frequently. This is a book that is about 2 authors who go to stay in a villa in Italy, and about 50 years ago in that villa, some crazy stuff went down when a rock band stayed there, and that 70s timeline is based on Mary Shelley, Percy Shelley, and Lord Byron staying at that villa in Switzerland when Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein. And so this was just incredible to me in terms of how layered it was. Rachel Hawkins did some amazing research. You could really feel her love for Mary and Claire, who was Mary's stepsister, on every single page. The fact that this was not only a love letter to Mary, but also to Claire was really wonderful in my opinion. I love it because of its connection to Mary Shelley, of course. I don't know how this book works for someone who is not completely obsessed with her, but I see a lot of people talk about this as a thriller. There are mystery thriller elements in it, but they don't come in right away. And so I hesitate to say that this is a mystery thriller. I hesitate to give you those expectations because I don't know that that's what you're going to get. But the historical fiction timeline is so interesting to me. This was really, really fascinating, and I just loved how much respect was given to Mary Shelley in this. It was wonderful in my opinion. And I do think, if I'm being honest, this has to be my favorite book of the year. Everyone and their brother is talking about Fourth Wing, and so am I. I really enjoyed Fourth Wing. I think the people who hate it have forgotten how to have a good time, honestly. This was so fun to me because it really was everything I have ever wanted out of a fantasy read. And it reminded me just how nostalgic fantasy can feel. This is about a dragon riding school, and so it kind of has that school setting that I know a lot of people really love. But to me, I really liked how cliche and predictable parts of this were. I think that's really comforting. I think that makes for a wonderful comfort read, and a lot of the time for me, that's what fantasy is. And some of the reason that I haven't really liked a lot of fantasy recently is just how dark it is, how heavy it is. And this to me was very light, very refreshing. Certainly things happened in this that were really dramatic. The stakes were really high, but I just felt like it was really cozy because in some ways you knew what the outcome was going to be, you knew what was going to happen. And so I just really thoroughly enjoyed this. I also really loved Violet, who was the main character of this book, because she was chronically ill. I thought that was really wonderful representation, but her character was just so funny to me. She was really, really dynamic, but she has to be one of my favorite characters that I've read about this year as well. I really, really enjoyed her. I loved her personality. I loved how she interacted with everyone. I can't wait for the second book of this series to come out. I think it comes out in September, so we don't have to wait too long. Maybe the second one will wind up being on my favorites of the second half of the year. We don't know. Let's talk about Alone with You in the Ether by Olivie Blake. This is so weird because I have tried Olivie Blake 3 times this year. 3. Once was okay. This was 5 stars. I have DNF'd the other thing that I have tried from her. And I'll come back to it, I really will. I think she is such a unique writer. I love her style. I love how purple her prose is. I really love her prose. But to me, there has to be something about her characters that just doesn't work for me a lot of the time. And so I don't know what it was about Alone with You in the Ether that was just the lightning strike moment for me. But oh my gosh, this was incredible. I read this in a 24-hour readathon back in March or April, and I essentially read it in one sitting. This is not just one of my favorite books of the year, but I feel like it's got to be a favorite of all time. I just was blown away by this. This is a love story, so it's a contemporary romance, but I think there's also an academic quality to this. If you kind of like a dark academia vibe, I feel like you'll also like this because that was a lot of the tone of the conversations between the characters. And what I just thought was really fun and refreshing about it, and maybe what I kind of thought was relatable, was just how attractive they thought each other's minds were. That's what they were really interested in. The physical component of attraction came very secondary to their intelligence, what they were interested in. And I just thought that was really wonderful to see because I think that's kind of how I operate in a way. They were nerdy about very different things, but they still found a way to talk about that with each other, and they were really interested in each other's research. This is another book that I don't think will work well for everyone, but it felt like it was written specifically for me. It was just one of those special cases. Last but not least, we are going to talk about my actual favorite books of the year. I truly do think this might beat out The Villa. I'm trying not to give it recency bias, but I read this trilogy this month. This is everything I have ever wanted. I mean this truly. I have never been given everything on a silver platter like this. And yet Holly Black gave it to me. I read the Folk of the Air trilogy this month. The Queen of Nothing, the last book in the trilogy, my mom's currently reading that because we wound up reading these together. Once I read The Cruel Prince, I was like, Mom, this is incredible. You need to read these. And so we've been reading them together and we have been having the best time. This series is a Fae series, and it follows our main character, Jude, whose parents were murdered by a member of the Fae, and she has been taken back into Fairy, where she has been raised kind of as one of them, but always separate. I don't know how to sell this without spoiling it, because to me, the best part about this was that I didn't know what was coming next. I didn't know what the tone of this book was. A lot of people sell The Cruel Prince as a romance. That is not what this is, though the romance is top tier. When I say I want romance, this is what I mean. When I say I want enemies to lovers, this is what I'm talking about. Literally, they are making out, and while this is happening, she says, I hate you, and he says, I hate you too. And I said, thank you, chef's kiss. Holly Black? Holly Black? Girl, I hope you won awards for this. The Fae in this were mean, nasty, and gorgeous, and that is all I want out of a Fae series. Honestly, there is nothing I would improve on here. Nothing. And the reason that I loved this so much was Jude as a main character. I am obsessed with her. She could do no wrong. She is literally the meme, you know. I've never done anything wrong in my entire life. I know this and I love you. That's me with Jude. I don't care what she does. She has a reason for it. I believe it. And I support her. This is why I love reading. This has got to be the best thing I have read in years. Truly, I guess I'm going to say these are my favorite books of the year because this blew me away. I could not put it down. I could not wait to get back to it. Throughout the day, I was constantly thinking about Jude and Carden. This was just everything to me. This is what reading is all about. honestly. And so definitely, I think I have to say these are my favorites of the year. I know it's recency bias, but I'm still thinking about them. It's been a week since I finished them. I am still thinking about Jude. So those are all of the 5 stars that I have had so far this year. It's been a really incredible reading year for me so far. I just hope the momentum continues into the second half of the year. But I would love to know down below if you have read any of these, if you rated them 5 stars, and I would love to know too what your 5 stars have been so far this year. But that's going to be all for me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.